Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Vintage Motocross Q&A. I'm your host, Joe Abadi. Thanks for watching, and thank you, Jordan, Chelsea, and Susie, for helping me put the show together tonight. Let's get down to the starting line, and I'll tell you what we've got planned for you. Starting line is, of course, brought to you by Motion Pro. In the next time try this segment, we're going to be talking about fork seals, fork drivers, and a couple of things that you should be looking out for next time you replace a set of fork seals. The Moto Showcase, a 1980 YZ125 that was sent in to us by David Watkins. You're going to want to see this a little bit later on. Here's the problem. What should we do when it comes to clear coating gas tanks when we're putting on graphics or decals? We'll talk a little bit more about that. What's it worth? A 1978 RM125C. You're going to see what it's worth. The expansion chamber continues tonight. I'm looking forward to bring you another video by Fritz Gunther. It's very, very interesting. I'm looking forward to showing it to you. Don't forget to share the show. If you're on Facebook, share it with your friends. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to comment AMSOIL. We will have a random share giveaway winner a little bit later on in the show. So keep sharing it. Whether you're on Facebook or you're on YouTube, somebody's going to be a winner later on in the show tonight. Of course, you can see all of our shows on YouTube, every episode of Vintage Motocross Q&A, and you could listen to all of our interviews from Vintage Motocross Radio. Go over there and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And when you do, you'll get an alert like this. Tells you when we're live on the air. That's YouTube. Of course, I want to thank our sponsors, AMSOIL, Motion Pro, Full Circle Racing, Vinco, Preston Petty, and Northwest Mako CZ. The next time try this segment is brought to you by Vinco. Keep the ride going. Today I want to talk to you about fork seals and how to install them. But there are a couple of other important things that you should know about before you order your next set of seals. The first thing I want to talk about is a fork seal driver. They come in a couple of different varieties. This one happens to be from Motion Pro. It actually breaks open into two pieces. They're good when you're doing inverted forks or when you don't want to take the fork legs out of your bike and you just take off the lower fork legs. We'll get to that in a minute. This is the one that I've had for many, many years. I really like it. It's heavy, it's got a knurled edge on it, and it's got a couple of different size pieces like this that will fit over your forks. You want to find one that fits comfortably over the fork that you're working on. This fork tube happens to be 35 millimeters. This one's a little bit bigger. That's okay if it's a little bit bigger, but when you use something like this, you want to make sure that it is slightly smaller than the seal that you're going to be driving into the lower fork leg. That's very, very important. Now, I like this tool also because it's got a little O-ring on here. You put it into the end of this, you pop it in there, and you're ready to drive your seal a little bit later on. But now, let's talk about the seals. Many times, seals will have the marking on the top. So if you go to replace it, you can tell your seal and bearing house what the size is. This one happens to read 35 by 48. What does that mean? 35 millimeters inside diameter, which would be the inside of your fork leg, 48 to the outside diameter, which is the inside of the lower tube. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. This is where you want to pay attention. On this seal, sometimes it's marked what the height is. It's very, very important that you know the height, because once you put that seal inside this tube, it's going to be held down by this clip. This clip should be sitting snugly on top of that fork seal. Why? Because when your forks compress, they hydraulic, there's oil in there. That seal will pop up if it's not held down by that clip. Now, how should you measure the seal? You want to make sure that you use a digital caliper like this, something that's very, very accurate where you can get a measurement. So if you know the inside and the outside diameter, you want to make sure you know the height as well. Very, very important that you get the right height. Many times, you'll go on eBay or you'll go to other places and order fork seals. They'll generally show a generic picture. What you see in the picture may not be what you get. You got to be careful. Another good way to ensure that you're going to get the perfect fit is to measure the tube that you're going to be working with. Then you know exactly, and be careful because they can change from year to year. Honda's had 34 millimeters in 74, 75, I think 76 too. In 77, they went to a 35 millimeter. So be careful. So measure your tube and measure the inside of your lower fork if you're not really sure. When you go to put the seal in, this is kind of important. Whether you do it with the fork assembled or the fork is apart like this, it doesn't really matter. Of course, you're going to have the spring out. When you get your tube inside your lower fork, you're going to want to put your seal over that. Now, here's a little tip. When you go to put it on, you're going to be driving it down with this tool right here. You're not at the state fair trying to hit that sledgehammer to ring that bell to win your girlfriend a Cupid doll. You just want to drive it down low enough to get into the fork to where it bottoms out in the right place. You don't need to slam it. You just need to get it down far enough. Now, in this case, this tool isn't really long enough down here where the shoulder is to drive that fork seal all the way down into the lower tube where it needs to be. What I would recommend or suggest that you could try is taking your old fork seal, which I'm having a little difficulty getting on this thing right here right now, getting your lower fork seal, I'm sure Jordan will edit that out. Put it over the new seal, okay, and then drive it a little bit further down. It's only going to go a little bit further down and you'll be able to get the old seal back out again. You could pry it right back out. So those are my tips. Make sure you know about the inside diameter, the outside diameter. Just as important, make sure you know the height. How are you going to check the height? Check the height with a digital caliper. Some guys are doing this during a restoration. You have time to measure your fork tube and your lower fork leg for the inside diameter. Some guys may not be doing that. You might have an emergency at the track to where your fork seals are leaking oil and you just want to drop the lowers off and replace the seals. But get a quality seal driver. Motion Pro makes a good one. The quality is fantastic. I don't really have anything negative to say about it. I just think that it's really made for a newer fork, something much bigger, probably your inverted forks. Look online, find yourself an old-fashioned one like this. You'll be much better off. That's my tip for this week on Next Time Try This. I want to thank Vinco for being a sponsor of this segment. Vinco, keep the ride going. The Moto Showcase tonight is sponsored, of course, by Preston Petty Products. And tonight we have a 1980 Yamaha YZ125 to us that was sent in to us by David Watson. I'm going to read to you a little bit about this bike while Jordan goes through the slides. David says he purchased this bike for just $300. It turned out to be not such a great deal. The gas tank was cracked, the frame was technically junk, the ignition was shot, the airbox, etc. The only items were salvaged were the engine, the exhaust pipe, foot pegs, and rear brake lever. I did upgrade it to a 1981 swing arm with an anodized shock. I used 83 43 millimeter forks with double leading shoe front brake, an NOS European Nicosil plated cylinder, NorCal Vintage ported it. I also have a new 34 millimeter carb, new Tassinari reeds, gold valve emulators, modified airbox Renthal bars, an 84 throttle upgrade, a billet clutch, new OEM clutch plates, a PFR exhaust pipe with Evo silencer. It runs well. It's got a great power band. It's very stable on the suspension. And I raced it at the Coupe Classic last October. Dave, this is an absolutely beautiful bike for a racer. I was very, very impressed with it. The upgrades were wonderful, and I do remember seeing this bike at the Coupe Classic. It was truly, truly special. I want to thank you so much for sending it in to us here at Vintage Motocross Q&A. For doing so, I'm going to make sure that you get a nice gift compliments of Preston Petty Products. Dave Watson, thanks so much. Speaking of Preston Petty Products, they've got them coming. Boy, Paul Stannard has been making stuff for Preston Petty Products again. Front fenders, rear fenders, the grips. He's got hats, shirts, everything you've come to expect from Preston Petty Products over the past, well, almost 50 years now. So, Preston Petty, visit them online, and there's always a good special going on there. I want to thank Patty and Paul Stannard for all they do for us here at Vintage Motocross Q&A and at Vintage Motocross Radio. And don't forget, they also got, and I had them on the show a few weeks ago, they had these new aluminum number plate clamps that go on your fork legs. Your number plate can screw right to it. They're beautiful. They're light. They're anodized. The quality is fantastic. And Paul's got those available. Check them out, PrestonPettyProducts.com. In the Hear the Problem segment tonight, which is, of course, sponsored by Motion Pro. Motion Pro for all your specialized tools, cables, and controls. We've got some questions that have come in this week from some of our viewers. Let's see what we have up first. Jordan? Brian Eugene Smith. Are there any tips for removing rust from inside the frame tubes? Yes. There's a couple of questions that come to my mind though before I answer this, or while I'm answering it. There could be some things that maybe some of the people who are watching the show tonight could contribute to this as well. Now, Evapo Rust is a great product. It really works well on the inside of rusty gas tanks, really neutralizes the rust, puts like a coating over it. When you're done, does a real great job. I see no reason why, I haven't done it personally, but I see no reason why you couldn't use Evapo Rust in the tubes of your frames if you can slosh it around in there and you could see that it's working. I don't know where in your frame that water began to come in. Maybe the frame was sitting outside, it didn't have the stem in for the steering, and maybe it got in through there. Maybe it got in like on, let's say, certain Makos or some bikes that don't have a rear frame loop. Those pipes at the back of the frame are sometimes left open. They don't have plugs in there. Sometimes water can get down in there too and cause a variety of damage when it comes to rust. You really need to probably find out where the water got in and how the rust began. Yes, you can use Evapo Rust, but how you get to see in there, or if you know that you're getting out the rust that's been created in there, I'm not so sure how you could do that. That's one way of doing it. If somebody else has some more information on how to get a better look inside that frame or what products people have used, or maybe they've done something else to get the rust out of there. I've heard of people, of course, going to radiator shops, having gas tanks boiled. Maybe the same thing can be done with frames. I don't know. I'm looking forward to hearing some comments from the viewers tonight, but my recommendation would be to try the Evapo Rust, but how are you going to get in there to see what's going on? I'm not really so sure, but thanks for the question, Brian. Craig Smolin with 1L. Do you have any tips for clear coating over tank graphics, stickers, and decals? I have a couple of tips for that, Craig. The first thing you want to do is make sure that you have a quality graphic that goes over your tank, much like there is on this Suzuki tank right here. Another thing is you want to make sure you don't buy things that are too thick. You want to get a nice thin vinyl, a nice thin sticker. If you're doing Elsinore tank or some of your other bikes, whether it's a Suzuki, certain Kawasaki's, of course, too, you got to be careful about the thickness of the graphic that you're going to buy, especially if you want a clear coat over it. Another thing I want to talk to you about is making sure they're straight on the tank. How you do that. Before you do it, you should really make sure that you have your tank with you, it's on the bike, and your bike is sitting level. Then you can see where your graphic is going to sit. A lot of times, in fact, what I did on this bike right here was I took my Suzuki graphic while it was still on the backing. I took some thin, fine masking tape, and I measured about where I wanted it. So I didn't put the sticker on, but I just put some thin pinstriping tape on there. I moved it to where it was level, and then I put the sticker on, I removed the backing, and I was ready to go for a clear coat. You may not have that option. If you're sending your tank out to be painted by someone else and you're going to have them put the graphics on, you're going to need to take some pictures and take some measurements of the way that tank sits on the bike and send them along to your painter, whoever it may be. So that's what I would recommend. Make sure you get a quality sticker that's not too thick. Make sure you have your bike sitting level when you figure out where your sticker is going to be. Have good communication with your painter. If he doesn't know where that sticker goes, he's going to be relying on you to tell him where it goes before he puts it on the bike, before he clear coats it. Craig Smolin, thanks for the question. Bent Hahn. This question was actually a little bit longer than I'm going to read to it here, but it was interesting, and well, I thought it would be really good to bring it to you. I've been using nylock nuts on cylinders and heads, and while I've never had a problem with them, is there an alternative? Bent likes to use that. He gets a little added security from putting a nylock bolt on his base nuts and on the head nuts of his bikes. Not a bad thing. Some bikes actually do come with them, but he doesn't like the way they look, whether they're blue or whether they're red. Here's what I would recommend, Bent. You should use a Fuji lock nut. That's the one that's down here, right here in the lower part of this picture. On top of that nut, there's like a washer that goes around it. It's actually pressed in there. It's a little on the loose side. They move around inside there, but when you tighten that nut down, it gets tight. Jordan has it highlighted here with a red arrow. So when that when that Fuji nut gets tightened on to either the nuts of or the bolts rather, or studs to your base of your cylinder or onto your head, you can lock them down pretty well with that. And when you torque them, they're not going to move. Ben Hahn, I want to thank you for sending that question in. I hope that was of some help to you. We're going to take a commercial break right now. Don't forget to keep sharing the show, whether you're on Facebook or you're on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, please comment AMSOIL. We're going to be giving away a prize at the end of the show tonight. Jordan, let's take that commercial break and we'll be right back.
Hi, Jeff here, introducing you to Motion Pro's magnetic pickup tool today. Now, we've all had that bad experience where we drop a loose part or fastener into a hard to reach place like a skid plate or belly pan. Well, this is the right tool for the job that will retrieve that stubborn part and get you back to working on your ride. As for the features of the magnetic pickup tool, first you have this billet aluminum handle. There's a low profile magnetic tip that's extremely strong and in fact will even pick up a Motion Pro T handle. This flexible shaft can get into hard to reach places and with its protective coating won't damage the finish on your motorcycle. The magnetic pickup tool is affordably priced at $14.99 and is available from your favorite power sports dealer nationwide. So avoid future frustration and pick one up for yourself today.
Motion Pro, love their products. What's it worth? We've got a 1978 Suzuki RM125C that I found. Actually, how this bike came to me was through our Facebook page, Vintage Motocross Buyers and Sellers Price Guide page. This segment is, of course, sponsored by Full Circle Racing Limited. Be sure to visit my friend Tom McAllister online at Full Circle Racing. He's got spokes, rims, and services for both vintage and modern bikes. Now, getting back to the 78 RM125C and what's it worth. It recently sold for $4,100 and it was a private sale. But as I said, it was on the Buyers and Sellers Price Guide page and the seller was nice enough to come back to us with the information about what it sold for. $4,100. I'm going to read to you a little bit about the bike. Jordan will go through the slides. I bought this bike in complete but decent condition. It was a little bit rough. It was stripped down. I had the frame in all black items, powder coated, including the hubs, the brake backing plates, the handlebar shock springs, the brake rod, the foot pegs, and it has the original kickstand. I had the rims re-anodized, and I found some NOS spokes for the wheels for both of them. All the hardware was polished and zinc plated. It has an NOS number plate on both sides and the front. I went through 3 gas tanks before I could find one that was really usable for the bike. I had it polished. It came out beautifully. The pipe is perfect. Also found was an original NOS silencer. Many NOS parts were found, even an NOS chain tensioner and chain buffer. A lot of the parts were found throughout Europe and Australia. It was a bike I had when I was 17 years old, and like many projects for many of us, I got way deeper into it than I wanted to. But when I was done, the bike sat in my office for 6 years. I haven't put gas in it since it's been completed. It's always resided in my house. I took it out for a few exhibitions, including to Redbud for the Legends and Heroes Tour, and I was excited to meet Brock Glover, where he presented someone with the award there at the Legends and Heroes Tour. There could be a couple of things that could be improved. Both fenders are new, but they are aftermarket. Other than that, everything else is a perfect match. Some of the hardware is new. Whatever was replaced, it was replaced with a quality item. I'm really excited to have your bike on your show. And I want to thank you for the Vintage Motocross Buyers and Sellers Price Guide. It's a great service. Well, there it is, $4,100. I know for a fact that there's close to $4,000 probably in outside services and parts in this bike, not counting the platform bike. What can I say about it? It was a great deal for $4,100. I'm sure somebody is real happy about that. I want to thank Full Circle Racing for sponsoring this segment. As I mentioned, the Vintage Motocross Buyers and Sellers Price Guide page has been on Facebook for over 6 years now, with over 16,000 members. There's a lot of information to be shared there, a lot of bikes, a lot of results from auctions, and also private sales, just like the 78 Suzuki RM125C that you just saw on the show. So go over to the Vintage Motocross Buyers and Sellers Price Guide page, sign up. You'll see a lot of great information on there, and you could also share what you've sold recently, or if you need some help with valuing a bike that you're looking to purchase, that'd be the place to do it. The expansion chamber is, of course, brought to you by Full Circle Racing. Tom McAllister, he's just all over the show tonight, isn't he? The expansion chamber is a new segment of the show. We're taking videos in from people, and they're between 1 minute and 2 minutes long. We had one from Robert Oscar Palmer a few weeks ago. This week, we got a great one coming in from Fritz Gunther. Jordan, let's get a look at it and see what Fritz has to say.
Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. I'm going to talk about today's set and lock tabs, washers on nuts and bolts. As you can see, these are pretty, ratty and chewed up. There's a lot of ways to do things, but only a couple ways to do them right. So what I like to do is nuts torqued, take a real sharp chisel, and what you want to do is just use this chisel lightly just to get the tab started up. Once the tab's started up, then you take your channel locks, slip joint pliers, grab it, and just work it the rest of the way up. So what that keeps you from doing is, if you're going to take a punch and you're going to hammer on this, right behind this shaft in here is a ball bearing, rolling element bearing. You could possibly Burnell those rolling elements, which is a fancy term for putting dents from the balls into the races. So you don't want to hammer on that. What the channel locks allow you to do is set that lock tab without having to hammer on it. If you want to go back in and just gently tap it down with this, that's fine. But
you're not at the state fair trying to hit that sledgehammer to ring that bell to win your girlfriend a Cupid doll.
That's what I like to do. Thanks for watching.
Fritz Gunther, thanks for sending in that great video. We don't want to Burnell our ball bearings, that's for sure. If you want to get a video here on the show, I'd be happy to have it on. Contact me, inbox me, send me some kind of a message. I'll tell you how to send your video in to Vintage Motocross Q&A, and we'll feature it here in the expansion chamber. Once again, Fritz Gunther, thank you so much for sending in that video. Full Circle Racing, as I mentioned earlier, they still got the hub powder coating special going on. They'll clean it, disassemble it, blast it, mask it, powder coat it. Standard colors, $50 a hub, $10 more if you want to do the backing plate too. You can request a quote to have a different color other than matte black or gloss black. Typically, it's about $20 more. Tom McAllister at Full Circle Racing doing all the service he possibly can on your hubs and rims. You can send him up your old hubs. He'll send you back a brand new set of wheels. Tom McAllister and Full Circle Racing. Thanks so much for all you do for us here at Vintage Motocross Q&A. In the product spotlight tonight, we're going to be taking a look at another product from Vinco. We've got some Kawasaki bearings for the 1980 and 1981 KX250. They're just $24.95. Your wheels go round and round, according to Vinco. And with this high quality new bearing kit, we'll make sure they do this with ease. Vinco has high quality wheel bearing kits to get you back on track. These wheel bearings kits are made with modern materials and manufacturing techniques to ensure an as good or better fitment than OEM performance. This KX250 rear wheel bearing kit includes 3 bearings, 1 seal to complete your rear rebuild with ease. The OEM part numbers are provided to ensure the exact fitment as well. Just $24.95 available from Vinco. Keep the ride going. Thanks, Vinco. Northwest Mako CZ, they got a nice special going on this week. You know, vintage motocross handlebars are getting harder and harder to find. And even when you find reproduction sets, they don't really seem to be what you really want. I've seen some for sale across the bottom in the middle where your clamps attach it to the bike. A lot of times they're knurled across there these days. They don't look very authentic. Well, Alan Brown's got a set of bars for just $54.95 available at Northwest Mako CZ. They do come in chrome. You certainly couldn't get a used set of bars chrome for that kind of money. $54.95. That's a great special going on this week at Northwest Mako CZ. I want to thank Alan Brown for all his help here on the show. We are going to take a commercial break. Keep sharing that show, whether you're on Facebook or you're on YouTube. When we get back from the commercial break, we are going to have tonight's random share giveaway winner. We'll be right back after this.
Classic and vintage dirt bikes are more than a hobby. It's not just about the ride. It's about the work that goes in. The work that keeps you connected to the ride. It's about bringing the bike back to life and doing it with your own hands. It's about the adrenaline and adventure. And when it comes to putting all the pieces together, only Vinco knows the bikes and parts the way you do. Vinco. Keep the ride going.
During that commercial break, Susie came in with the random share giveaway winner. It is Stephen Cordova. Stephen Cordova. Thank you for sharing the show. We're going to get you a nice gift, compliments of AMSOIL. Contact us with your mailing address. Get your mailing address to us, Steve. We'll get you something out this week. Compliments of Russell Waters and AMSOIL, the first in synthetic oil since 1973. This Week in Motocross History is brought to you by Northwest Mako CZ. Jordan, what happened in history this week first? Jojo Keller. Happy birthday, Jojo Keller. It happens to be his birthday this week. It was just yesterday, but in 1988, Jojo goes 2-1 to win the 500cc Pro Class at the notoriously rough Diamondback Raceway in Cocoa Beach in Florida to begin the Winter Am Series. Bob Hanna, a regular visitor to the series throughout his career, won the 250 Pro Class that day. A local prospect, Bobby J. Mann, bettered Keith Bowen and Keith Turpin. But on that day, Jojo went 2-1 in 1988. Happy birthday, Jojo Keller. In 1991, Jean-Michel Bayle wins all three. Jean-Michel Bayle takes his first win in 1991 in an AMA Supercross season in the old Houston Astrodome over Jeff Matasevich and Damon Bradshaw. Bayle would go on to win the 1991 Supercross title over Bradshaw, as well as the 1991 AMA Motocross 250 and 500cc championships, becoming the only rider to do so ever to win all three classes in 1 year. Jean-Michel Bayle in 1991. This was a great night. In 2008, David Bailey and Rick Johnson, the combatants of the 1986 Anaheim Supercross Classic, were honored on Throwback Night, during which riders, teams, and fans were asked to dress in their best 80s gear. Bailey, who had been in a wheelchair since 1987, got the whole stadium on their feet cheering when he rode out on a specially prepared Honda along with his old teammate, Ricky Johnson, who happened to be on a KTM. That was before I lived in California, but I happened to be there on my second trip out here to the coast, and I remember that night very, very well. The crowd was electrified at A1 as David Bailey did come out there with Ricky Johnson and did take a lap around the track. That was in 2008, and that's it in MX history for this week. We have some announcements for you tonight as well. We got some racing going on. It's getting real close to that season, huh? Jordan, what do we got up first? Oh, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But first, I want to talk about my guest last week on my radio show, Vintage Motocross Radio. The guest was Barry Higgins. He had some really, really great stories. Listen to this one right here. This is a good one, but he had so many about Makos and Yankees, a whole lot of stuff going on there.
You could take basically two OSU motors hooked together with a sprocket in the middle between the two motors. It had an ignition on each side, and it had basically a primary chain that drove the transmission and the clutch and all. But you could take the couplers apart on that thing, and you could make it fire as a, most of the Japanese twin cylinder two strokes were 180 degrees, with one piston up, one piston down, that made them rev quicker and all that. So we built one of those. We built one of those Osas like that, put street tires on it, and a little tiny sprocket on the back of it, and some wildfire pipes on TT bike cylinders and carbs and all on it. Took it out on the cross town, whatever it was, interstate, and we'd see how fast it would go. And Paul Dean drove John's Ferrari Dino that he had, and I rode the Yankee, and we clocked that thing at over 140 miles an hour.
Wow.
On tires that were good for 60.
Great story from Barry Higgins, and he had a lot of other ones too. Get a moment, go over to Vintage Motocross Radio, and you can listen to the interview with Barry Higgins from last week. This Sunday, I'm very excited to have as my guest Mr. Steve Wise. Steve Wise will be with me on Sunday morning at 11 a.m. I was on the phone yesterday with Steve, and he told me that he's got a story that's never been told. Never been told, and it's about him, Danny Magoo Chandler, an RC 500 works motor, and something that happened at the Superbikers in 1982, I think it was. He said he's never told the story. You'll be able to hear it on Sunday morning at 11 o'clock when I'm live with Steve Wise. Stoughton Mountain 2-day trial. Got a 2-day trial coming up. That's this weekend in Elora, Tennessee, the 23rd and the 24th. Sign-up start at 9 in the morning. All AHRMA classes, Youth, Premier, Classic, Twin Shock. They've got them all. 2 days of trials riding at Stovall Mountain. That's this weekend. Might want to get down there. Plunk, plunk. What else we got going on? Monster Mountain, Tallahassee, Alabama. Monster Mountain is coming up February 13th and 14th. They've got an AHRMA National there. That is a fabulous track. I've ridden there. Probably the best track I've ever ridden on is Monster Mountain in Tallahassee, Alabama. So you've got to start getting ready because those races are coming up. There's also another one coming up February 6th and 7th in Buckeye, Arizona, the Arizona Cycle Park. It's the 24th annual Duel in the Desert. I think my buddy Dave Boyden has something to do with that. So racing season is just around the corner. We're already into just about the last 2 weeks in January. So within 3 weeks, they'll be out there burning premix. Get your schedule, get your bikes, get your gear ready. It's all getting ready to go. Vintage Motocross Q&A T-shirts are still available for just $21.99. It's got the logo across the front. It's got my autograph across the back. 100% cotton. The link is in the show description. You can still get them while they're hot. Also, look what we got going on here. We've got coffee mugs with the Vintage Motocross Q&A logo on this. We're going to have more coming in shortly. I'll be telling you all about it probably on next week's show, or I might post something about it on the page this week. But we got them, coffee mugs, Vintage Motocross Q&A logo on there. I'll tell you all about how you can get one. Sponsorship opportunities are still available. Inbox me. I'll get you a proposal. You know, our sponsors, number one, like Vinco, they've been with us for over a year now. Motion Pro has come aboard. Obviously, AMSOIL, Northwest Mako CZ, Full Circle Racing, Preston Petty Products. They're all here. They're all staying. They're all seeing results. You can get the same results too. In December, we had over 100,000 people. Each week, the show reaches over 20,000 people between people watching it live and sharing it afterward. And that's not counting the Vintage Motocross radio show, where I also talk about products from Motion Pro, or at least give plugs to those companies while I do the radio show. So if you're out there, you've got a product that you're advertising on Facebook and you want to get it out to a lot more people, get a hold of me and we'll figure out a way to put a budget together for you to get your product out there and reach all the people that are watching Vintage Motocross Q&A. I want to thank you all for watching the show tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to join me on Sunday for Vintage Motocross Radio, where my guest will be Mr. Steve Wise. Don't forget to share the show tonight, and please support all of our sponsors. Jordan, thanks for doing such a great job again. Chelsea and Susie, as always. And thank you, the viewers at home. What's that? You want to see the dog? Gino! Gino! Where are you, boy? Come on, Gino! Yeah, there he is. Okay.